It's a PG-3.
And I really need to arch my nemesis, Rusty. Now throw in that laundry. Run that water cycle for me. Oh, wait, what was that? Was that a car alarm beep?
Good evening, DragonCon. Welcome. This is DragonCon Update. I'm your host, Will, and today is September the 1st, Sunday, September the 1st, 2024. Hope you're having a great con. We have some great guests this evening we're going to be talking to. We've got drag king and comedian Jarvis Hammer, who's going to be on today, and of course, podcaster, Tolkien scholar, and a general of everything else in that world, Alicia Fox-Lenz. So we've got a lot happening. Before that, I want to get the last couple plugs in. The first is for the blood drive. The blood drive's still happening. It's in full swing. Go get your pins. They're open tomorrow for the blood drive from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. It's at the Hyatt Regency LL3. And of course, it's not too late to help support the Arthritis Foundation, which is DragonCon's official charity partner this year. They are matching up, DragonCon is matching up to $125,000, which means $250,000 can go to the Arthritis Foundation. You have a lot of ways still to donate. There's, of course, direct donations. You've got the coloring book to pick up. Various charity events are still on the schedule, one of which I'll talk about a little bit later. And, of course, tomorrow's charity auction at 11 a.m. is still happening. Up next, I have some important updates on the DragonCon Hustle 5K Trek. There were 1,000 open spots for the Hustle, and over 900 of them have been filled. My source says that there actually are now less than 30 charity events less than 30 models at the charity events booth in the Marriott to get. So get those race medals. They're on the marquee level of the Marriott, one below the lobby. Their hours are from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. tomorrow. And don't forget to tag your sweaty self, #DragonConHustle. All right, with all that, we have a very, very special DCTV news correspondent who's going to be talking about Solve for X. Let's go check it out. This is Will with DCTV News. We are here at the Hilton, and we are checking out a really cool track, Solve for X, which is a science-themed variety show. I'm here with Ray Pendergrass, who is the host and producer of the segment.
So it's Solve for X. It's a science-themed variety show where I get professional creatives to do short, creative performances inspired by science. They do not have to be educational, which is great because it's a 10 p.m. panel, so no one's sober enough for that. And then I also torture the scientists by having them do a little bit of improv comedy and a thing called slideshow karaoke, where we make them give a presentation using slides they've never seen before, and they have to give a presentation so factually inaccurate that it pains them, but it's fun.
As one of the producers, were you one of the founders of this event?
Yeah, this is actually my creation. It debuted at DragonCon.
So how many years have you done this at DragonCon?
This is our 10th year.
Wow. That's awesome. I love that. When you created this concept, what was in your brain? What were you thinking?
I was in the Atlanta art scene at the time, and I knew how much talent there was here. And there's a big variety show scene in Atlanta, at least at the time. I wanted to figure out a way to marry science and art in a way that was very fun and kind of raucous.
Thank you for joining us while we checked out Solve for X. This was year number 10. Come join us for year number 11. This is Will with DCTV News, signing off. Thank you to our special DCTV News correspondent, Will. You did an amazing job, as always. I love it. So we had a great time at Solve for X last night. I hope next year you can attend the 11th anniversary of the event here at DragonCon. And of course, it's hosted elsewhere, but we've had it here 11 years in a row. But without further ado, I have Jarvis Hammer, drag king and comedian extraordinaire, as I understand it. So it's great to have you here tonight. Tell us about you. Who are you?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I am Jarvis Hammer, a ghost here to haunt you, like that free trial you forgot to cancel.
I heard about that. I heard that you actually just cursed the stage in 2019 or something.
Yes, that is when I got my start, or I should say, when he entered my mortal vessel and took it for a spin around the drag clubs of Atlanta.
I love that. So, which came first, the comedy or the drag?
The comedy. So back in 2015, I was living in Chicago and doing open mics because that's what you do when you live in Chicago. And I did that for a while, but then I wound up moving to Atlanta basically for a trade school.
Oh, neat.
And that kind of took over my life for a while, and the career I got out of that, and I felt my soul withering at, in the midst of my 9-to-5 existence, and I knew I wanted to get back on stage. I found out about drag kings, and I had a bit of a self-taught background in makeup, and obviously had been a theater kid all my life, and so I decided to give it a spin by just going out in face to MSR one night, and I got booked off of that, and then eventually I started blending the two. I developed Jarvis Hammer, the ghost of this washed-up actor who died in 1973 after a spotlight fell on his head.
Oh, goodness.
And so I wound up doing comedy in drag as this character. And
that's really cool. That's really cool. And there's something for cosplayers about this character that they connect with.
Oh,
what would you say, how do you communicate in that persona? What communicates to you when you're playing or you're embodying that character?
Oh, well, I suppose I've always been drawn to the archetype of the has-been, Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard. There's a Chekhov play about this, I forget what it's called, it's one of his shorts, and there's, this elder thespian on stage while they're trying to close up, and he's just reminiscing about his heydays of yore, and there's a guy sweeping up being like, "Sir, this is a Wendy's, like we're trying to close up shop," essentially. Something about that character archetype has always compelled me, I think, because it's this sort of cozy home of feeling like, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a stage actor, and I kind of failed at that, and I kind of failed at being like a, regular stand-up comic as myself, and so I sort of created this character who embodied my more desirable traits.
So a different part of yourself, so to speak. All right.
Yeah.
So you never really gave up comedy, it just took a new form.
Yes, yeah.
I love it.
Now I've failed upwards.
So how does makeup play into your performance there? Because you said you had a lot of makeup experience and of course being on stage and with a thespian background. How did that come to be? Well, how does the makeup play in?
Right, well, drag is, one could say, the art of transformation,
Sure.
And so makeup is a huge part of that. Big experience in makeup, I don't know, I was self-taught, got into it in the sort of like heyday of 2016 YouTube makeup tutorials.
Lovely.
And getting into the notion of fantasy or transformation makeup.
That's great.
I'd always painted since I was a kid, so that I had that sort of facility with a brush and with cream paints and
So
such.
would you consider yourself an artist?
Yeah,
with your paints?
I
love it.
I mean, I don't, do acrylic paintings or anything like.
Sure.
I mean, drag is now all-consuming. It's
of course
my full-time job now. But yeah, I think I've already lost the plot. But does that answer your question?
I don't know. Where are we? We're at DragonCon. That's right.
Right.
We're having a great time. No, I think it's great, and I think your makeup has really, from what I understand, developed into something. What would you describe your makeup style as? In drag, what would you describe that as, if you had to put a word to it?
Oh, skeletal, I suppose.
Skeletal.
So my
Love
character is a ghost, and I like to say the sort of like end benchmarks of my brand guidelines are Disney's Haunted Mansion on one side.
Love it.
And The Haunting of Hill House on the other.
That's a really interesting blend there.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Robert Kurtzman's makeup work, who I've seen here at DragonCon. I got to sit front row one of his panels like a few years back.
Oh,
I think it was 2019. Yeah, and ask him questions of the great man himself. So Haunted Mansion, very cartoony. I take sort of my color palette from that, sort of teals and seafoams and whatnot. And then when I think of Haunting of Hill House and Kurtzman's work on that, it was sort of this stylized, cinematic, realistic ghost. So I live somewhere between those two worlds, and that's sort of how it informs how I applied paint to my face.
That's
and create
great.
this
And
character.
you also you've taken it another level though. You starred in Dragula season 5, if I'm understanding.
Yes,
Tell me
yes.
about that. How did that happen?
Yes, I am a victim of the Boulet brothers. Yes, so I applied. There's an application form that goes out ahead of each season each year. And, you know, I had been friendly with some of the producers ahead of time, so I knew that they knew my work. And yeah, so I just applied, went through some callbacks, and flew out to LA at an undisclosed time to enter the Thunderdome, as it
Wow,
were. Yeah.
that's great. And if someone else had interest in what you do
Mm-hmm.
and wants to maybe go down that path themselves, what advice would you give?
Just do it. Honestly,
it.
as with any
Like
art
Nike,
or
but
practice.
we don't promote. We're not promoting Nike. We're just saying, like Nike, just do it, right?
Yeah, the way I did it was I messed around with makeup at home for a while and then just went out to the club. I went out to a drag king night here in Atlanta
Nice.
at my sister's room and, you know, sort of show face, shake hands, meet people in the community, ask them about what they do, support their shows, tip at their shows or take photos or videos.
That's great.
We are vain creatures of the night in the drag world, so any, you know, footage of our performances is much appreciated, and people will remember that about
Sure.
you. Of course, it helps to, a lot of people in the drag world are theater kids or, you know, makeup aficionados, so usually there's some sort of grab
Artistic,
bag of
sure.
skills that people bring into it, but all that helps, you know, going down those sorts of paths or taking classes or just teaching yourself off of YouTube, all that helps.
I imagine
build it.
as you were getting started in 2019, the pandemic coming in 2020 had an
Yeah.
impact. How did that affect you? Did it affect you?
Yeah, well, at the time I had actually kind of taken an extended break and I wasn't even sure if I was going to go back to it. And then the pandemic hit and I thought like, oh, well, we're all going to die. So I guess I'm
know,
not going
right.
to perform again. But what happened was, well, I lost someone very close to me. I lost my comedy writing mentor.
So sorry to hear that.
And thank you. And that came on the heels of the digital drag revolution. So what happened was Twitch kind of became this platform for drag and
Video gamers, and then it became for drag.
for drag and other cabaret, burlesque, even performers. It kind of
great.
became like old school MTV, where we'd have a VJ, like a host, bringing on these
Are
self-made
they allowed to call it
videos.
MTV still? I mean,
No.
is it really music
guess
television at this point?
Not really.
Yeah, that's
no.
right.
But yeah, and so somebody asked me to do their digital drag show, and it was sort of a renaissance for me in this very, very dark time. And instead of, you know, community in the club, we had community in the chat rooms of these Twitch
That's
shows.
great.
And so I came out of the pandemic with all these new internet friends. And those internet friends wound up booking me on their shows in Chicago or New York City or
That's
Boston.
so cool. So you got to go.
Yeah.
You got to go back to Chicago
I
and
did,
share
yeah.
your entire self in a new way.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there any overlap in the cosplay for you in the drag? Like when you're doing drag or cosplay, where's that overlap? Is there one?
Yeah, I mean, drag is just cosplaying your OC. And
Okay.
instead of conventions, we're more likely performing for drunk people in bars.
You know, that doesn't
that's the
sound
only
that
difference,
different from
yeah.
the convention. I'm just saying that's not. I don't know. I don't know what convention you're at, but I've seen a little bit of that at
Yeah,
night.
you're right. Certainly this one. Yeah, so, and obviously, crossplay is a huge thing, and that's been a gateway drug for a lot of people into drag. And I certainly was coming to DragonCon cosplaying before I did drag too.
That's great. So it kind of set a
yeah.
little bit of a foundation for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. And do you have any drag icons that serve as an inspiration for you?
Let me see. Yeah, you know, I would, I'd think about Murray Hill probably
Okay.
would be the one that I feel like I stand on the shoulders of. Murray Hill and Dr. Wang Newton. They are both drag king character comedians. Murray Hill was one of the founding fathers of Club Casanova, which is
sure.
an iconic drag king show that ran in the late 90s in New York City. And it's kind of what gave us our idea of the contemporary drag show
That's
today.
great.
Although Murray now has like reached new heights and is on Somebody Somewhere on HBO and such, and I think he more identifies just as like a straight up comic, but
I hear that.
Yeah, he has his roots in the drag king world, and yeah, so those would be the two that I say.
That is awesome. I know you have several panels this weekend that you've had, and you have what? Is there any? Did you get to attend the con this year, or was it more just as the professional this year?
Yeah, I know this is my 8th con and my first time attending as a pro, so it was a very different experience. Also, I'm working another con next weekend, so I kind of had to.
Are you allowed to do that? There's only DragonCon. Are you allowed?
Well, it's more of it's the Great Canadian Halloween Market if you're in Toronto.
There you go.
So I guess it's kind of it's a different form of jazz. But yeah, so I was intentional about pacing myself and not going too hard, although tonight will be for the dance parties.
Of course.
I did get to attend the Weathering, Aging, Distressing, and Dying panel this morning, which is a favorite of mine every year. But yeah, not as much.
Not
I did
as much
not
as
get
you'd
as
hoped
much
you would.
as in years past, yeah.
Well, I hope at least you still had fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's
Thank
been
you for
a
having
pleasure. I hope to see you again next year, either in drag or in cosplay or both. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. It's great to have you, Jarvis. Thank you so much. We have another great segment here coming up for you. It's Cosplay Bingo for Charity. Let's check it out.
DJ Garland here.
And Kat.
With DCTV, and today DCTV tries Scavenger Hunt Bingo Costuming Edition. Each bingo card costs $1, and all the proceeds are going to go to DragonCon's official charity,
The Arthritis Foundation.
Are you ready to compete against me?
Yep, I'm gonna win.
Okay, may the best competitor win.
Yes, indeed.
This thing is a lot tougher than I thought.
You're not done
I
yet?
got like, what do you mean not done yet? I got 3, so I'm doing pretty good.
I won already.
How did you?
That was such a fun way to support the Arthritis Foundation. I can't wait to win again next year. This is Kat signing off with DragonConTV.
Thank you to TJ and Kat for attending the Cosplay Bingo for Charity. Remember, that does help the Arthritis Foundation. We're trying to get to that $125,000. I forgot to show this earlier, just like the DragonCon hustle. I'm not trying to hustle you or anything. I'm trying to get you to go donate. Go donate. It's so helpful for so many. But I want to go right to our next guest because we've got a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. This is, of course, Alicia Fox-Lenz, who is the co-host of Queer Lodgings, a Tolkien podcast, which I think is so cool. That is so amazing. As a Tolkien scholar and expert, tell us, how did that come to be?
The podcast?
Yeah.
Spite.
Spite, okay.
We were having a really hard time surrounding Rings of Power and kind of the racist, misogynistic backlash that was happening in regards to that. And a few of us got angry enough that we decided we were going to systematically break down every single talking point.
Okay.
And we just it's impossible to shut any of us up.
Which is wonderful, which is exactly what needs to happen.
So we now have made an entire podcast out of our spite.
That's awesome. You know, speaking of your podcast, how did the podcast itself come to be? Like, did you just talk to other people and decide to do it, or was this did it form out of something else?
So it began with my righteous anger, and then I was the Mythopoeic Society that I'm on the board of. We have a Discord server, and there's a lot of like really leftist leaning people on that Discord server, and we were just complaining kind of en masse. And I met up with Grace, who is also a steward of the Mythopoeic Society, at a MythCon a couple of years ago, and was like, did you want to do this? Or is this a thing that we're going to do? And someone else who was like really vocal was Leah. And it's funny because I've never actually met Leah in person. I've only met Grace in person.
There we go. So Leah could be a hologram.
We do have a fantastic picture of her, like huge, like God on a screen behind us at last MythCon because we haven't seen her in person yet, but she keeps coming to virtual events. But yeah.
Oh, there's the picture right there on screen. We all get to see it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So that's kind of how it started, and it's been. I'm so happy that these other people turned my anger into something like beautiful and positive, and actually like helped me move past a lot of that.
You know, I obviously you have a passion for Tolkien. Where did that come from for you? What part of Tolkien resonates for you?
Yeah, I kind of came to Tolkien late. I read the books for the first time about a year before the films came out because I had a teacher who, bless him, dealt with me as a ninth grader being pseudo-intellectual in his classroom for way longer than he absolutely needed to. But he told me I should read these books.
That's great.
And that I should read them right now before the movies come out and ruin them.
My mom was the same way, exact same way. She's like, read them now. The movies are going to come out. Read the book.
Yeah. I don't agree with him. I don't think the movies ruined the book. I also really love the movies. But he was 100% right. It is exactly the kind of story I needed to hear at that point in my life. And I fell away from it for a while until my grandfather died. And my grandfather's death, I grieved it through watching the movies.
Oh, wow. That had to make an impact for you.
Yeah, and that's directly what brought me into scholarship. Like I had a rough few years and I needed to feel like I was a useful person again.
Okay.
And so I started doing scholarship and kind of like fell into then being on the board of the Mythopoeic Society, and then starting this podcast.
You keep mentioning the Mythopoeic Society. I'm trying to look up here. What is Mythopoeic? Tell me what that is. Tell me what that society is, because it's so cool.
So the Mythopoeic Society is the oldest North American Tolkien-based society. We ate the American Tolkien Society back in the 70s.
Okay.
I always think that's funny. We don't always just do Tolkien. We also do C.S. Lewis, Charles Williams, Owen Barfield, all the Inklings, but also other Mythopoeic work like...
That's my next question. What the heck is an Inkling?
Yeah.
I had both of those down. I'm like, what is that?
It was a writing group that Tolkien was kind of instrumental in when he was teaching at Oxford. A bunch of dudes. It's usually been referred to as, homo platonic.
Okay.
And they met at the Eagle and Child. And it's where you see all these memes about the frenemies dynamic between Tolkien and Lewis. Most of that happened in these Inklings meetings.
So how did your involvement in this society happen?
Kind of by accident. I was looking at a place to present some of my research because I was doing research at the time into audience reception surrounding 9/11 and The Lord of the Rings. And this place MythCon was amenable for me to go and present there.
That's great.
And then something that kind of magically happens with Mythopoeic Society is if you smile too much, you get roped into things.
I've heard that happens. Yes, I understand. I can empathize with that. You know, I was thinking about it, and as I was looking a little bit into that, it feels a little bit like Greco-Roman works. There's transformation as a big part of the process in mythology. How does that apply in Tolkien's universe?
Yeah, so Tolkien wrote this lovely poem called Mythopoeia, where he is really laying out his case. If you read On Fairy Stories, which there was a panel about today, or Mythopoeia, like in conjunction, it's really about Tolkien is making a mythology to lead people to like big T truth. And that
I can see that through the writing and all of his works. It's very apparent, actually.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like, I'm a white Catholic dude, this is Christian Jesus truth. It is very much a specific way, of specific morality of viewing the world. And it's very specifically the vehicle to do that is through Mythopoeia because it kind of taps into actual myth making, right?
Okay.
So like when people in like Greco-Roman times, they were making these myths as a way to explain phenomenon, and you're doing the same thing, but it's just one person doing it versus an entire culture.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see that. I can see that. And I also know that Tolkien was very influenced by Beowulf, and I know that you've talked about Beowulf before. How did that influence you? How did Beowulf influence you? Which came first for you, Beowulf or Tolkien?
Barely Tolkien. So I read Tolkien in 9th grade, and I didn't study Beowulf at all until I believe it was like my junior year, and I hated it because I read it in translation, and it was not a great. It was a high school grade book translation. It was
of course.
Garbage. I took a class where we translated Beowulf in its entirety over the course of 3 months.
Wow!
And it was a fantastic experience because like. The layers of meaning of each individual word in Beowulf is
because that's not in English. That's actually in Old English, right?
Yes, it is.
I should say modern English. It's in Old English. I don't even think it's in Middle. It's in Old.
It's in Old, yeah. And it's the layers of meaning you can load onto one particular word in Old English. It's completely different than it is in modern English. Our language is a lot more finite now, even though it is more diverse. Like things have very discrete meanings where they didn't back in the day. So like doing that sort of translation yourself, you get a whole lot more out of the text. And bringing that back to Tolkien writes in that way because that's what he studied.
Yep.
So like every single one of Tolkien's words is so very distinctly chosen for what he's trying to get across multiple different things. I think that's beautiful.
That is beautiful. I think that's awesome. I want to circle back to your podcast though, because the podcast Queer Lodgings, it's a Tolkien podcast. You've had 22 episodes, and I believe it's not even 10 days yet since your last episode that you had about Éowyn and Faramir. What's your goal through the podcast? What are you looking for? Obviously, it was a reaction to some of what Rings of Power has. What are you looking to communicate?
We're looking to essentially build a community, build a space where it's okay to not be a white Christian man and read Tolkien, because there's a whole lot of that goes on in the community. Like, I want our podcast to create a space where it's okay to be like queer, it's okay to be black, it's okay to be a woman, it's okay to be,
That's awesome. I love that. And I love everything that you've been doing. It's amazing. Now, you have some panels coming up tomorrow, right? I think I see you have one at least. You're talking about Rings of Power Season 2?
I am.
Talking about the premiere, right?
Yeah.
So didn't you love how, and my big thing is, don't you love how Amazon decided to drop that right in the middle of DragonCon? I thought the same thing last year when they decided to drop Wheel of Time right in the middle of DragonCon. And this year, Blizzard, as much as I love you, decided right beforehand, let's go ahead and launch an expansion for World of Warcraft and Overwatch 2 new season. So tell me, how much of that have you been actually able to see?
So there was a pre-screening on Wednesday at a number of theaters that did the first 2 episodes, and we went to go see that.
Great.
And they had a viewing party at DragonCon kind of at the last minute, where we were supposed to watch all 3 episodes, but we only ended up getting to watch 2 because the episodes were over an hour apiece.
Yeah, I saw that they actually added some time this year. It looks like it's upped its game a little. What do you think? I know you're going to be talking about it tomorrow, but...
Yeah, so I'm not the target audience for this show.
Sure.
Because the Second Age of Middle-earth has a lot of holes in it, and they're filling those holes in ways. There are definitely things that I disagree with.
Sure.
My very, very short thing is I love what they're doing with the dwarves. I love what they're doing with the orcs. I absolutely hate everything about what they're doing with the elves.
Okay.
It is character assassination.
All right. Well, there we go. Character assassination it is. If you want to talk more about that tomorrow, you're going to be at the Marriott at 11:30 a.m., I believe.
Yep, I'll be there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, not at all. I'm horrible in the morning.
Just like me. Just like me. You know what? I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've had a good con from what you've been able to do, and I hope your panel tomorrow is just packed and you get to have all the excitement talking about dwarves and orcs, and maybe not so much about elves, hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We do have another segment real quick to show you. It's VR and video gaming. Let's see what's happening.
I'm Ryan with DragonConTV.
And I'm Ruby.
And we're here in America's Mart, Building 3, where Gaming Track lives. You ready to take me on? Let's see what you got.
You got nothing. You got nothing. I have no idea. Yeah.
Well, I guess I won. This is Ruby with DCTV signing off.
Thank you to Ryan and Ruby for that awesome segment. And I want to say, you know, that definitely is America's what? Oh, I can't say that. So we're going to move on along. There's no shortage of great events tonight for you to check out. I mean, there's no shortage. First, to highlight charity again, we've got the Coloring for Charity, which is in the Hyatt Learning Center. It's beginning now. So go ahead and stop. You can watch the rest of this later. Go right to the Hyatt Learning Center. It's going to be going on for hours and hours. It's going till midnight. So go check it out, listen to lo-fi, and help raise some money for the Arthritis Foundation. All while you get to have fun coloring. It's great. And of course, there's also the Buffy Horror Picture Show, which is one of my personal favorites, which is starting right now. Go ahead and leave and go do that. It's amazing. Once More with Feeling, you get to experience that in a unique and special way. And of course, a DragonCon must tonight is the Masquerade. The Masquerade is not only a tradition, it's a requirement. We aren't allowed to have DragonCon without the Masquerade. It's legally required in the state of Georgia. So it begins at 8:30 p.m. and it's in the Hyatt Centennial 2 through 4, and it's going to have some overflow seating. If you can't see it in person, you can go to the overflow at the Marriott Atrium Ballroom. And of course, we will have it live on DragonConTV. In the Hyatt Regency 5, there is also going to be at 10 p.m. a Dungeons and Dragons Live. It's going to be so cool. I highly recommend you go check that out. And we also have, but certainly not least, Cruise Shadows. They are going to be here at the Hyatt Centennial 2 through 4 at 1:30 a.m. We talked about it yesterday. It's scheduled for Monday, but it's really tonight. Don't think about it tomorrow. It's tonight. Stay up. Go have fun. It's amazing. And DragonCon doesn't end on Sunday. DragonCon continues on into Monday. There's some great things going there. The charity auctions at 11 a.m. And of course, a really cool event that I think is going to be just so much fun for families. Kids Talk. It's DragonCon 2024 where the kids get to go practice their moderating skills, their panelist skills, and talk about how did they like the con? What did they enjoy? I really hope you as a family can get to check that out. Now, I have a couple pieces of art I want to highlight. You've been seeing behind me on Friday and today. The first is the Winter Dragon. The Winter Dragon stands as a majestic guardian over his kingdom of ice and snow, perched atop crystalline ice shards. Cold is not only his weapon, but also the essence of his being. The sculpture is actually created by David Lee Pancake, and it was initially designed using Nomad Sculpt on an iPad Pro. I mean, iPads are doing everything right now, see? And of course, it's meticulously created by the artist, hand-painted, and you can find copies at his booth at the art show. And of course, you can also purchase them on his website, www.davidleepancake.com. Now, the other piece I want to highlight for you is by Paige Carpenter, who's currently living in Houston, Texas, loves mythology, poetry, and writing, and is writing a dark fantasy novel set in 1985 New York. You can see their Instagram at Paige N. Carpenter. They are accepting commissions, and you can email them at roguedoe, that's ROGUEDOE, at gmail.com, or you can DM them on Instagram. And the painting is Achilles in gold. It's oil on a wood panel, and it's inspired by the Greek hero of the Iliad, Achilles. And Paige is fascinated by mythology and folklore, as we said, and specifically how stories shape our culture and change over time, which is kind of what we were just talking about with Tolkien. So I hope you get a chance to see more of their art. I'm excited to see it as well. That's our show. I'm getting told we have to leave, but that's okay. We're going to have one more great show for you tomorrow in the morning at 9 a.m. You've got the Late Show. You're going to have Brian, TJ, and Ray. And of course, I will see you next on DragonCon Update next year on Thursday, October 28th. I don't know what month I'm in. August 28th, 2025. Enjoy the rest of your DragonCon this year. It's been great to see you. See you next year.